All right, we're now recording. Hi, everybody. Good to see you.
Okay.
I'm
Hello.
going to be eating some of my dinner as we're talking. So pretty much, yeah, Mike, welcome. You're new to our subcommittee. It's good to have you with us. Just to kind of, I guess we can just jump right in. Mike, to kind of get you up to speed, we've been meeting to kind of hash out details thank you, Sam. See you later. We've been meeting to hash out details for the Sustainability Commission was able to successfully petition the Budget Committee for a $5,000 pot of funds that we are using to establish the first kind of community green fund, essentially. That's what I've been calling it. We could call it something else. But so we've been kind of working together to figure out or develop like the pipeline for what that looks like and what it looks like to actually distribute those funds. So looking at, ooh. Was there anything else I'm missing?
I said that's great.
Thanks. Laura and Louisa, does that kind of cover it so far? Sweet. Looking at my notes then, the last things that we talked about. So Mike, we met on the 15th of February. Last time we met. So some of the things that we had discussed were figuring out, like at least more immediately figuring out like how do we define like what can be funded and how do we just looking at like our bylaws and how that's structured, making sure we can fund the things we want to fund and kind of what defines an event. And then we had talked about, again, putting together more concrete plans for what does it look like to create like a funding process or an application process. And then kind of the big picture idea that I think Laura had mentioned that I really liked was coming up with like a 3-slide pitch or something similar that we could eventually put together to like advertise and let people know that this funding stream is going to be available and that they can apply. So all that being said, the big updates I think are we had our big commission meeting and we kind of primed the pump at this last meeting to let people know that this is all stuff we're going to be proposing and bringing to them. I was super relieved that the money does not go away in June or July or at the beginning of the new fiscal year. That was kind of the concern that we were afraid we were going to really have to rush to get the money kind of distributed. So that is great that is not something we have to be super worried about immediately. And then, yeah, my big updates were, I did have a phone call with Julia yesterday, who Mike was a member of the Human Rights Commission, and Julia had a lot of experience with this kind of funding process and how the HRC had done it in the past. So I picked her brain, which I can get into, that will hopefully provide us some clarity on next steps. But before I get into like my side of things, I don't have like a formal agenda prepared, but I was wondering if anyone else wanted to chime in with any additional kind of thoughts or anything else kind of before we get moving.
I just made a new document just shortly before this meeting in the shared folder that I copied the webpage from HRC, like their request for funding page, and then
perfect.
And then I just copied our bylaw language into a comment on the side so we can look at that. And I mean, it just seems like we need to make small tweaks. So I support maybe going through both those documents and trying to put the changes we need in there.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so would you mind dropping that link in the chat, Laura, if you don't mind? Yeah, so I can just jump in really quick with what I talked to Julia about. So Julia pretty much made it sound like what we have been up to, or kind of what the structures we have in place right now are we should be pretty well equipped to like do the things we want to do without having to get too technical. So she was saying that the HR, I muted myself. In terms of the questions of like events and what can be funded, she said that is like pretty flexible, or like the HRC has funded a number of different things. And so I actually don't think we need to be too concerned about like really hashing out like the minutia of like what that actually means. Like she was suggesting that we kind of keep the HRC structure of like whether people want like support, endorsement, or like the 3 kind of funding buckets. And Laura, thank you for putting this in this document. This is super helpful. So I think we can model a lot of this, like a lot of this process off of exactly what is in this Word document, where this whole thing where people fill out the request for support form, the applications are received by staff, all of these like rules. And then Julia was just saying that typically the applications are just put into the agenda packet. People look at, it just goes out with our agenda packet and people review it. And at the beginning of every meeting, we vote yay or nay. I know we had some questions or some concerns about whether or not that would be an expedient process for the whole commission. But Julia, I always, for some reason, get Laura and Julia confused, so I apologize. I'm always doing that. Julia was saying that that was never an issue with the HRC, and she was a pretty big proponent of just like keeping things really kind of streamlined and simple. Like she was like, I don't think you necessarily need to come up with like different funding buckets, or like she's like, I don't think you have to get super complex in how you structure it. And she had a good point where she's like, this is the first year we're doing this, so like maybe let's just see how it goes. And like if there's a rush on the bank, right, where like all these people are applying for funding, I don't know if that's a bad, like we were both saying, we don't know if that's a bad thing. Like if we're trying to just get the money out and get it to people who are doing good work, I don't know if we need to create a really intense structure that's going to like hang us up, or like will delay like our ability to start getting funding going. But I wanted to just throw all of that out there and see how people feel about essentially taking almost exactly what Laura has put in here, tweaking some of the language, but I think we could just be good to go if we want to just use the HRC template. But so I'm going to stop talking and let everyone else chime in on what they think.
Yeah, I agree about the bucket question. With my program example, it was a much larger fund, and we needed to show adherence to an alignment with the different areas of sustainability. But I think you're right. The simpler, the better, and let people make a pitch to us around why they think this is relevant to the Sustainability Commission, and we might learn something about how other people think of sustainability too, as opposed to prescribing it.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I completely agree with both of you.
So that's pretty exciting then, because that means we can just kind of tweak some words, and hopefully then this would be something that's on the website. So it's kind of like the how to promote it would be the next thing that we would have to think about, right? And the methods and the locations to do that. And did HRC have examples around how they did that?
They did not, but again, I think their funding is, or this has kind of been ongoing for a while, so I'm not even sure if Julia was like around, right, when they first had to like announce it or like advertise.
And now it's just kind of a known thing.
Yeah, like I think it's just kind of like now it's just like an established thing that people like know about.
Okay.
So, but I really loved, Laura's suggestion from our last meeting that I mentioned of like, we put together like a 3 slide deck, and like going to like honestly the meetings probably all of us already attend in other capacities, and just kind of like taking that as like a mini announcement and getting that out, I think could be really great. But I agree that I would probably want to, or like us as a subcommittee, we would probably want to hash out just like a little bit in terms of making sure, like, for like the online request form, like making those changes to the website is something like city administrator people have to do. And I don't know how long that takes, or like what the kind of like technical back side of that looks like, or again, like, do we have to create the PDF? Do they just like rehash that PDF? I don't really know. But I think we could kind of be doing this in tandem, right? Where like we can be doing some research or having the conversations about the back half of like getting the website component set up, but then be building the 3 slides or whatever it is we want to say, and just kind of having that ready to roll. At least that's kind of what I'm thinking. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts about like how we do the website component. I guess in my mind right now, the two directions the rest of kind of our time can go would be, we can go through this Word document or the text for the webpage that Laura's pulled up, and we can kind of sift through that a little bit together and make sure that's okay to go. And then, or we can also finalize whatever like pitch or whatever we're bringing to the commission meeting this next month, because we're going to have to, I assume, like give them a full summary of what we're doing and what we've decided.
I noticed that in the, sorry, going back to the application itself, I noticed that the HRC one doesn't have any particularly prohibited uses of funds. I mean, it sounds like that's deliberate and we just have to make a, you know, a determination when somebody applies. But if the city has rules around what things can't be funded, it would just be nice for applicants to know that up front so that they don't waste their time. I don't know if anything came up around that in your conversation.
It does say on their website that they have to, it's subject to Oregon law, city charter, city budget constraints, city manager delegate approval. So I guess their only constraints are the law.
That sounds really, really bureaucratic and confusing.
Yeah, so it's just the law. So
Okay.
we talked about adding a note about this can't be used for political campaigning of any sort. But I think other than that, I don't think there is anything other than like illegal activity.
Right. I just put in
Okay.
the chat the document that I had put in our old meeting notes. So this was like, this kind of has the full, again, I think this was specific to the HRC. Yeah, this was the HRCs, but honestly, I think the city would just, Rini would probably just have us use the same thing. But this just outlines again, kind of the funding approval guidelines, blah, blah, blah. So that might be, I'm sure like something to this extent would have to be like listed on the site, maybe for legal reasons or something. But yeah, Julia said there was only like really one time that she remembered like an application that was like even minorly contentious. And she said it was just like they had a discussion at the beginning of the meeting and then they like hashed it out and it like moved on. So, you know, I think while we could design a process to like preclude ourselves from being in those situations, I think it's kind of, again, maybe I'm being too loose, but there's a part of me that I'm like, I think we just like don't know what we don't know. And so like, until we start getting applications, I don't know if I can like project into the future, like what we're trying to prevent against. And it might just have to be a thing that we see how it goes and kind of like work that out in the first year. But like, again, Julia was like, oh, we did not like, or like, we do not like, it is not that tight within the HRC. And so I'm kind of questioning, like, is there any reason we would have to make ours any more stringent? Like, I don't know, but I'm open to discussing that.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think that's fair.
to try to, you know, start out, just like make sure we get it running, we should go through those two documents and then note what's missing and what we need to do.
Okay, which one should we start with?
What if we start with,
The draft form perhaps for funding?
yeah, that one looks, the draft form, yeah, there's only a couple things on that.
Okay. So are we trying to clean this up and make this the form?
Yeah, so this is the form that they had, and I noted where I thought things needed to be changed, but if you notice anything else.
Do we have a maximum or minimum?
We didn't have a minimum, but we had a maximum. It's in our bylaws.
We had a $1,000, according to my notes, we had a $1,000 maximum, but no minimum.
Okay. So should that be in the intro or under the level of support requested?
The support requested, I think.
Yeah.
And sorry, Mike, are you there with us? Or are we just
Yeah, I'm
talking?
here.
Okay,
I'm here.
just checking. You can see this form that we're looking at?
No, actually, I have the guidelines for community requests for supports up, and I don't know what you guys are looking at. I opened this
Oh.
myself.
It's the
Okay.
second link that Laura posted in the chat. I'll repost it.
Yeah, okay, those, I tried a few of those earlier and it looks like I don't have access yet to the, to your,
How about I just share my screen?
That would be
okay,
great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Can you see that?
yeah,
Okay, let me blow it up a little, make it a little more legible for everybody. So we start here with some rules around timing.
Is it the third Wednesday? Yeah, it's the third Wednesday.
So the old one has a requirement that it's submitted 45 days before the event itself. That doesn't look like it's here anymore. Should that be added back in?
That one is on their webpage. They didn't have that there. The text for the webpage one, they say it has to be, it's in the how to request funding. So they will first go to the website page and they'll see that how to request funding. And it says, that's where it says that they should send it in no less than 45 days in advance of the event.
Well, I just added it back into this paragraph just to clarify.
Sure. Remind them, yeah.
The only thing I'm wondering with that, and maybe this is getting kind of technical, but like given we're being kind of loose about an event, right? Like whether it's like a Facebook Live or like people are doing research for a podcast or something, like my concern would be like, I wouldn't want that to, like, let's say someone's like, I want to do a podcast episode in 2 weeks or something. Like, is the 45, like, does that create a situation where, I don't know, if we're being loose about what defines an event?
I would be more concerned about how the like allocation of the funds process would have to go. I mean, do they have to become, I mean, does the city just cut them a check? Do they have to become an approved vendor in some capacity? What is the requirement from the city to distribute the funds? And I was assuming that that was the timing requirement.
Yeah, I guess that could be, I can email Rini and CC all of you and we can get that confirmed before our big commission meeting. But Julia made it sound like it was kind of just like HR and I kind of takes this over. Like they're the ones that kind of work through this usually. And it's like a cutting of a check is like my understanding, but I can check that again.
Right.
To be sure.
Well, it would be good to know, because again, any boundaries that exist, it's just nice to share up front so that people aren't caught off guard, or somebody says we approve something that's in 5 days and then the city says we can't turn that around in that time. You know what I mean? I just want to prevent headache and heartache on that side.
But on the web page, if you look at the web page, which is what they see first, it says that in extraordinary circumstances, they may consider an application closer to an event. So it doesn't sound like that 45 days is like a legal thing. It's just they don't want people to be last minute.
Sure. Okay.
So I mean, it doesn't matter, but if we're going to say it here, we should also say that there's extraordinary circumstances, and maybe that's why they left it off, because people see it before they get to this, they already saw that. So they would probably have to note in their application why they're missing those 45 days if they are.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm just making a note of that. We'll check with Rini on this. So.
Are there any structures around the follow-up report? Is there a template for that if we're requiring one?
It's in the, let's see. There was more info, but I think it was on the webpage one. Yeah, it says if you go to, maybe we should look at the webpage one first, even though there's more questions there, because that's what they see first. And so that will help us know what's going to be missing from the other one.
Okay. So this one?
Yeah.
Okay. This is really big. It's freaking me out.
I just copy pasted from there. website. So we need to fill in what our activities and purposes are. And they had like the ones from HRC. So we'll have to use our bylaw document to fill that in.
Okay.
So I put our bylaws in the comments on the side. But I think this is meant for the public, so we can simplify it.
Mm-hmm.
Does somebody want to volunteer to do that, or do we try to do that in real time?
I can volunteer to do that.
Yeah, I was gonna say I can take a look at it too. Because my thought is, so just already big picture, like the thought is we could download or save like this document and the other document and submit those both with the agenda pack. Like I'm thinking like this is what we'd present, right? Is that what everyone else was thinking?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I can take a shot at this too, Laura, if you're busy. Up to you.
Okay, that'd be great if you could do it.
Okay.
Yeah, it'd be nice to just use our time now to maximize any decision making that needs to happen and just clarify the kind of to-do list.
Yeah. Okay. We can do that. Okay, so I'll do that. What's the next part then? So guidelines, right?
Yeah, is that guidelines? That's I think the thing that you added.
That's generic.
Yeah, that's the one that or the other thing that's in the chat. So that we have to edit too, which I didn't do.
Oh, so this is specific to HRC's guidelines?
Yeah, because it says on the top guidelines, yeah, it says human rights and neighborhood involvement at the top. Yeah, so okay, we have to redo that one. Does someone want to volunteer to do that one?
Sure. Is there anything other than name changing that has to happen? I'll do it.
It'll be a copy paste once we have this first thing done, because it says like the commission's activities and purposes are to do these, bullet points.
Okay.
Yeah, that shouldn't be much. It's just changing a few things.
Okay.
So there's no time limit on any of this? This is just.
What do you mean the time limit on the
Well,
use of the funds?
Yeah, or is it just an ongoing program that doesn't have an end date, I guess is the question. Until the money's gone, I guess.
I was gonna say right now it's until the money's gone, which is like a whole separate issue we could talk about in another meeting, like whether and how we would lobby for a re-up of funds from the budget committee. But right now I think we just have the $5,000 guaranteed and that's it, and we're figuring out how that gets allocated.
Right. And assuming the money comes from the budget, you could probably assume another year from the time you got this one, right?
Not with this budget cycle. I would not assume that this will be reallocated.
Okay, so this is probably going to be it for a while.
Maybe. I mean, it depends on, other priorities. If it was tacked on to some, climate action, community involvement piece that already had a lot of counselor support or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, we shouldn't bank on the, COVID drainage on the funds as well as the fires. I think that the budget is going to be a pretty sad sight this year.
Yeah. Okay, so Louisa, you're gonna look at this, which is great. Thank you.
I'll look at the guidelines. So we're kind of now looking at this online request forms, which is the next thing we're going to look at. 45 days unless just extraordinary circumstance. Somebody has to come to the meeting to answer questions.
Okay.
Approve or deny. We could fund at a lower level. It's valid. I mean, it's kind of funny about this because they're going to be at the meeting. So wouldn't they find out then?
Mm.
Maybe they have to leave or something.
Yeah.
Like secret deliberation. It's a public meeting. We can't kick people out. That's weird. Anyway. Okay. And then the follow-up. Oh, so okay, here's the requirement about the follow-up report. And it is very eventy. I mean, like if you're doing a podcast, there's no number of participants.
They can know number of listeners. I think they can track that.
Yeah. Or like with Facebook Live, you can see how many people watched it.
Okay.
Um,
Our concern on that, Mike, is that the HRC was specific to events, and since we're doing this in COVID times, what is an event was sort of a sideboard we weren't quite sure about, but apparently it's fairly loose. But it does have to be some sort of, I guess, education or public awareness raising something.
mhm.
The general gist.
Yeah, because my understanding from Julia, which I think is good to keep in mind, is like ultimately the money's already been earmarked on our behalf. So in terms of like how the money gets spent, it isn't like a city, there's like not really as much of a legal issue. Like again, other than like the political component, like whether it's an event versus a podcast versus a research thing that turns into a Facebook Live, like I don't think there's actually like legal restrictions at this point on how the money gets spent, as long as it's not like for like a political campaign. So like in terms of event, like we get to decide as a commission like what that constitute, because Julia was telling me that like their version is like, let's say the four of us came up with our own event, like we as commissioners could apply for the funding. Like she was saying the HRC pays even people within subcommittee, like people within the HRC use the funds for stuff, and we're not even doing that. So I think we have a lot more kind of free license on this, to define event more so than at least I thought going into it, which I think is good, and it provides some flexibility.
That was one question I was going to ask, and about that is that does the outreach committee, or is it possible for us to do like a little informational booth at like River Festival or something like that? I mean, you know, a lot of like the river development did that for a couple of years there, and you know, it's just basically come people ask questions or whatever, maybe you come and you know we could meet the people as you know, the commissioners, you know. I mean that's it may be under the purview of this or maybe somebody else. I guess anybody within the commission could probably apply. Is that what you were saying?
I'm saying I think we all agreed that this pool of money was going to be specifically for external, but I guess my point is like with exactly what we are outlining or like what's written here, it gave the HRC flexibility for even so I guess I'm saying like I think there's even more flexibility in how this gets spent than I was anticipating, if only because I didn't even know that like the HRC was like enabling like intercommittee eligibility, which I thought was kind of interesting. So I was just kind of noting that.
Yeah.
Some people we talked to, Kelsey and I kind of said that we're working on this in a meeting, and one of the people they want to do a mural project at the NAACP community garden that would be like an education program, but it would pay the muralist to make a mural that was like painted with the community in a COVID safe way. So we were kind of thinking, does that fall under the guidelines? And it sounds like, yeah, definitely, like that's totally within what we could do.
And so that kind of triggers back to the question that I had asked last time, which is that, you know, are there more, you know, if we're not going to ask for buckets, or if we're not going to give them any more direction, those folks might have to come to us before they apply to say, does this count? Because we don't give them any other structural understanding of what is eligible. So the more vague we get, the more probably people are going to be coming to us with questions to say, hey, does this count? Does this count? Does this count?
Yeah, it would be good to list as many exclusions as we could ahead of time, right?
That's one thought for sure. But you know, if we just said we will consider any ballot request that meets these overarching goals, which is public engagement, education, you know, like
around sustainability.
Yeah.
And they had the HRC one had their 4 things that they do, and so we just have to translate that and that's what Kelsey volunteered to do to ours. Like I think our
that meets those goals.
Yeah, like our mission is the Sustainability Commission works to create a healthy community now and in the future by proposing measurable solutions to pressing environmental, social, and economic concerns to the city of Eugene, its partners, and its people. So if it's under that, which is very broad, then it's meeting the broad goals.
Got it.
Yeah, I'm fine with doing the bylaw thing we just discussed and kind of using that, and then people make the argument in the application. Like I think, and again, Julia said like that's how HRC has done it and it's been going pretty fine. Or like because I said, I was like, well, we're starting this process. Is there anything that you've witnessed on HRC that's been problematic that you think we should consider and like revamp? And she was like, not really. Like, so I'm kind of open to seeing how it goes if everyone else is okay with that.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so that takes us to the end of the text for the webpage, right? Was that?
That's
Yeah,
it.
that was the last thing. So there's
Cool.
really just one thing to do, or two things to do.
You think?
This
Yeah.
is one, and
Okay.
you're doing the
So
other one.
this and the guidelines.
Yeah.
And then for the draft form itself, I guess it sounded like we wanted to take this out.
Yeah.
Levels of support. Is this,
That, yeah, I looked at our bylaws and that's what we said.
what is SC involvement?
A representative has to be at the event.
So we give them more money and then we show up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the thought was like, if we think it's that important, like we should go there and support the event and also talk about the Sustainability Commission. So Julia, when we talked, she said, they would go and be like, just kind of during the welcome, they would say a little, 1 minute
Right.
thing.
So that might be nice to clarify, right? Involvement would mean some sort of representation by Sustainability Commission and some sort of informational introduction or something.
Yeah, we can certainly list that if you want to put that in.
Yeah.
Well, if that's what we're saying, then let's
Yeah, they have to be, someone from the commission has to either physically or remotely like be there with whoever's like putting, publicly welcoming or doing the event. We would have a little say, a little introduction.
wow, it is the end of my day. I'm sorry.
No, you're doing great.
We'll spell that out. Is that it?
Yeah, could we be more vague just in case, like, I don't know, enough vague's maybe not the right word, but like a presence, like maybe it's the thank you at the end, maybe it's not exactly an introduction.
Well, I guess that could be specifics to be determined or something.
Yeah, that's fine. Because I'm happy to like kind of see, and again, like, right, like if it's a podcast or if it's like something else, right, that we could figure out, like maybe we participate in somewhere, or just like maybe we just leave it open to like participation. I don't know, something participation to be determined based on event structure or something.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah. So maybe we don't say introduction. We just say would include sustained participation. Well, I guess it doesn't really matter, but we're just saying it might not be actually an introduction. It might be something else.
Yeah, maybe we just do would include or
would involve
participation to be determined.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
Okay. We should actually read endorsement, right? Because if we're not asking for money, they're asking.
Yeah, then it's just an endorsement.
Okay.
Good call.
Blarga, blarga. Oh, okay. Look, they get a check.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have to provide any report on the use of the funds? Like, all we're asking for is a report on how many people showed up, but like they could host the podcast, pocket the money, and not spend it on the podcast in any way.
That's how the library does it. I think it's fine. Like when they sponsor events, they just write a check to whoever and you do the thing and we get the check.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. There has to be some level of trust. As long as they do the thing. If they don't do the thing, then there's a problem. But
Yeah, then that's a different.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess in my day job, I'm much more cautious about being audited for my grant allocations. So yeah, okay. Payment should go to. Okay.
Fine.
So this is the big chunk.
mm-hmm.
Is this true?
That was, I think we took out, I did this before we had that meeting and I believe that we took out any requirements because of, there's no way to require everything to make it accessible. So we just required nothing.
Yes.
Though we encourage people to make it as accessible as they can.
So what would you like this to say?
Maybe take out wheelchair accessible and leave the other ones. Maybe.
What I think I'm.
I mean,
getting
if somebody
kind of-
said, yes, this is strictly a fundraising event, do we care? Is that a problem? If it's not a problem, then why are we asking?
That was the one I was going to ask about. Is this the one where we can't give money to a fundraising of, or that's like the political piece? I was also confused about the fundraise, like whether that means we can or can't fund.
I don't know. I just copied it from theirs.
Okay, the event it sponsors strictly a fundraising.
I mean, is anything strictly a fundraising event? You gotta.
Unless you have like a gala or something. I would maybe take that one out because I don't understand what that means, or like I don't understand that. But
I mean, I would take this whole thing out because theoretically it would be explained by the explanation of what they're gonna do.
Right.
What do you think, Laura?
Yeah, I mean, if they said we want to print flyers for our fundraising event, we might say, no, that's not very important to us. But then they would have said that already. So yeah, I don't know. I guess we could just take it out.
I love it. Okay. Electronic signature, got it. Someone practicing the violin.
Yeah, playing violin.
Yeah, that's my daughter.
Fun. Sweet.
Okay,
I think
that is pretty basic.
looks good. Man, we did that in record time. Okay, outside of those, so in terms of the meeting that we have coming up this month, I'll obviously do my little bit. Louisa, you can do yours, and then we can just PDF that or like kind of export the documents when they're done. And then I can submit that for the agenda packet. Is there anything else we're thinking like more I'm just thinking for the deadline for the agenda packet. Is there anything else we should include other than the two documents we just looked at? And I can email Rini. I'll put that on my list as well, just about like how budgets are distributed and making sure that that's going to work okay.
Well, it would be the draft form, the text for the web page, and then is the guidelines a separate thing, or is that the web page as well?
It's it links off their webpage. So
okay, so we would have to submit all three of those things.
Yeah, I think so.
So the form, the text for the website, and what did we say? The
guidelines.
Guidelines. Okay.
The only other thing I can think of is the three deck slides to show, which I don't know if we have to do. I mean, I would guess that they would trust us just to.
Yeah, I don't think we would need to get those approved. I would say let's just go for. I mean, the
content would be pulled directly from those three forms, so we would just be cut and pasting.
Yeah.
So if they approve the content there, they would approve it in the deck, right?
Right. Okay, so we can tell them that's our plan, is to go to some meetings and tell people this is happening now.
Oh God, are we volunteering to go to more Zoom meetings?
No, ones we already go to.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say groups I'm already a part of that
me
Laura, between the two of us, I feel like we could cover a couple of them. I'm thinking then just for planning sake as a planner, doing a cover memo to go along with this. So just like kind of explaining like the like here's the form, here's the text for our website, here's the guidelines, but like the major narrative of like here's what we're trying to accomplish, here's the $5,000, here's our outreach, like doing like an outreach, like just a bullet of like here's the outreach strategy, we're going to put together 3 slides, blah blah blah. So maybe I can put together a cover sheet if people are okay with that, and just submit that, so we're not just submitting these like 3 documents and asking people to like figure out what the heck we're talking about. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I need hard deadlines. So if the meeting this month is on the 16th, 17th, true statement?
Yes. So when
Okay.
when do I need to submit this by? The 10th? The 9th?
You have to submit it by, yeah, I think the 9th or the 8th would probably be better, but then,
Okay, because it gets sent out a week before on the 10th, so the 8th or 9th. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So then we'll try to have everything that we need to you by the 8th. Kelsey, if you're gonna be in charge of compiling and sending over to Sam.
Yeah, that would be great.
Did I volunteer to do anything? Oh yeah, I did. Okay, I know what I'm doing.
Okay.
Wait, no, you're doing it. Sorry, I'm confused.
I
already did-
don't know. I think we're okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Okay.
We might volunteer to help work on slides later.
Yeah, sure. I'll do slides later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet. Then that, cool. Does that cover all the things? Are we hyper efficient? Did we
Yeah.
do it all? Okay.
Well, when you copy and paste from another commission, it makes it real easy.
Woo!
And I think I think it's valid. I don't think that we're doing that to be a cheat. I think we're doing that because it worked and because we want to leave it really open.
No, again, Julia was like, she was like, you should just do what is on there because like clearly the city, it's like already a recognized process. So she was like, save yourself the headache of trying to like reinvent the wheel, which I super appreciate. Okay, cool. Well, then we will all plan on having all this stuff put together by the 8th/9th, and I will get that to Sam. And yeah, does anyone feel called to want to present this at the meeting, or should we just wait until the day of and see who feels excited?
I just presented last month, so I'm taking myself out.
Okay. I'm happy to blab if anyone wants me to do it, but Laura, if you want to, I can also defer.
I also presented last month, so you can.
Okay. Okay.
And I'm
Mike
too
did
new,
that.
and I'm way too new.
I was gonna say, Mike, the only reason I didn't include you was I didn't want to like punish you like that to present something you weren't.
That's good. Yeah, I need to listen for a while before I can, talk to others about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, and just know that I'm more than willing to jump in and do things. I just need to kind of get up to speed.
No, totally. That sounds
So
great.
Mike, whose seat did you replace? I was super confused.
I don't know.
Oh,
I
did we have an empty seat
oh.
and I just didn't even know?
No, well, what it was
Oh, was it Julia?
Wait,
someone termed out, and it was the Ward 8.
Julia.
That's so maybe it's Julia.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
That makes me sad. It sounds like Julia was pretty sharp. I hope I can live up,
Oh, we're glad to have you.
Yes.
But we love Julia. We can't, oh well, Mike.
We love you
No,
too. We love everyone who joins and comes to work with us.
Beautiful.
So, cool. Then I guess the only last thing I'm thinking of really quick, but this doesn't necessarily have to happen at this meeting. Maybe Laura, you and I can just kind of collab on like maybe making a quick bullet list of like the organizations that we're thinking of that, and then we can maybe have more of a strategy like next month or something about like who's going to present at which meetings and making sure we're just like hitting all of the organizations that we're thinking. And obviously like anyone who wants to contribute to that list certainly can, but maybe we just kind of come up with a really loose strategy for the slides eventually, but I guess we can talk about that maybe offline.
What format would you do the slides in? Just Google Slides or?
Up to you, Laura. What feels good?
Google Slides are easy to share. So
Yeah.
They are. And we always have to think, you know, the post-COVID future is coming someday and we won't live on the computer. And so therefore the deck will be useful, but not forever.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, then I think I think we're good to end early if everyone would also like their extra 15 minutes of daylight since it's still sunny outside. Thank God.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, this was
Great.
super efficient and we got so much done. I'm feeling super excited for this next meeting and being able to get this rolling. So thanks everybody for all of your work on this. Cool. Then we can just all be in touch kind of, I guess, over email, just getting stuff in for the 8th or 9th. So we'll say
Yeah.
end of the day on the 8th.
Sounds good.
Okay. Sounds good. Have a good week, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Bye.